right here. I'm being slow with it.
Thank you.
Test, test, test. Test, test. All right, we're a small group and I'm a little nosy. So I want to know what was everybody's favorite Thanksgiving food this year? We're starting right back there. Stuffing? Okay. Bread or cornbread? Okay, there you go. Candied yams? Really? All right. You have some left over still? It's all gone? Cranberries? All right. Really? Huh. Okay. All right. What about y'all in the back? Okay. All right. Lavinia? So I also I went the the easy route and ordered from Cracker Barrel, which I've never done, which was actually really good. But they only have cornbread dressing, so I actually made stuffing, and it was really good. So favorite Thanksgiving foods that you made this year or had this year? Oh, there you go. Ham. I've never had ham at Thanksgiving. All right. What about you, Lynn? All right. All right. Well, there you go. Well, we are continuing our this second week of the reclaiming wholeness. Well, maybe. And then our author is her name is Suzanne. Uh, Help me with her name again. Seville. I know the problem.
What do you say to that person who feels left without anything, or someone?
Well, the first thing I would say to myself, but not out loud, is the church isn't being the church. And then I would say, you know, I get to hang out pretty well in a lot of cities across this country. I'll find you somebody. Or I say, go here, or look here, because there's always somebody if you're looking in the right place.
You can't become yourself by yourself?
Oh, no. No, I don't even understand that as a concept. But I know that people feel like they have to try. And don't you think maybe people feel like they have to try to become themselves by themselves because of the misunderstanding of what community is? And if community is a place that allows you to be who you are in the context of who everybody else is, wouldn't that be where you discover yourself, as opposed to a community that says, these are the things we believe, so if you're like us, then this is your community? That can't be right, because then if you're not like them, then what does that mean about you? And what it means to me is they can't see you. They just can't see you.
I thought they're just supposed to watch. I didn't know they were supposed to be seen.
I don't think so.
What's the role of the church? I thought it was like, you have a service, people come and watch.
No.
You maybe park cars and you invite other people.
All right, so now I'm going to have to do some Enneagram talk. There are people in the world who are thinking dominant, people who are feeling dominant, and people who are doing dominant. And a church service of any kind that doesn't, in that hour or 2 hours or 20 minutes, have a way in for people who think first, for people who feel first, and for people who do first, is inadequate. And so my husband Joe, who is a pastor, he's been a preacher for 46 years in 2 denominations, Catholic and Methodist, and he and I, him using all of his wisdom and me using Enneagram wisdom, are creating a program to take on the road to teach churches to have worship services that accommodate people who are thinking dominant, people who are feeling dominant, people who are doing dominant, and that's Enneagram wisdom, and have programming and opportunities in the church for people who are thinking repressed, and people who are feeling repressed, and people who are doing repressed. Because those are the 3 centers of intelligence, and until we balance those individually and collectively, somebody's always left out.
So once you see that and receive that, then what is worship, and then what is the role of the church? What would that fragrance smell like, and what would that union, what fruit would that union produce? What's the role of the church?
Hospitality. In a word, hospitality.
What's that?
Well, I'm going to tell you another story, because that's kind of how I roll. When Joe and I married, he's a former Catholic priest, and when we married, he adopted my 3 children, and we had a 4th. And all of my children were baptized in the Catholic Church. And when Joe left the priesthood, he didn't seek to be laicized, and he had been with the Vincentians for 26 years. And so he was excommunicated. I don't want to talk about that, but I'm not sure what that is or how you do it, or that seems like a pretty big mistake. He's the best human being I know, but it is what it is. And we found our way into the United Methodist Church. Joe was invited in as a pastor, and it's been really great. And he's been there for 31 years. And our son went to a Catholic school, our youngest. He we thought it was the best place for him for a lot of reasons. And he was 6, and he came out of school one day, and one of the nuns at the school escorted him to the car and said to Joe, James has had a bad day. You might want to talk to him about that. So Joe said, we will. And we called that child BJ instead of James. And he got in the car, and Joe said, BJ, what happened? And he said, well, they had Mass today. And he said, Sister explained to me that we're Methodist and not Catholic. And so at communion, I was supposed to go forward and just cross my arms over my chest to receive a blessing, because I couldn't receive communion because she said in our church we don't believe that Jesus is really and truly present, and in the Catholic Church they do. And he said, I just looked at her and said, oh, sister, that can't be true. If Jesus was up there and I'm out here, he would say, BJ, what are you doing out there all by yourself? You need to come down here with us. And she said she was going to have a talk with you. And his dad said, okay, BJ, I think I'm going to need to have a talk back with sister. So if a 6-year-old can get it, don't you think we might be able to? Or maybe not. Maybe we've come too far and we've been excluded too many times. And maybe at 6, there's still a purity about everybody being welcome that we would do well to embrace.
Who's created in God's image? Not everyone.
Every single.
Met some people.
Yeah, they are too. Darn it. You know what? I'm not going to tell you who the person is because it just wouldn't be appropriate. But there's this person on the planet who I just can't do. Like, I think she's horrible and mean and, like I get all whipped up about her. Look, I'm all whipped up already. And I've been so laid back, right? That's it exactly. And so I put on makeup most days, and I have an index card in my makeup drawer. And every time I pull out the drawer to put on my makeup, this card says, Suzanne, just remember, God loves Mary just as much as God loves you.
Is that good news or bad news?
That's great news. Because I could be Mary, or who I perceive Mary to be, any day of the week. And I am. I am sometimes. I'm that person to somebody, right? We're all that person to somebody. Most of the things that I think deeply about, I heard from somebody else, and then I wanted to figure out what that meant. So one of the things that Richard Rohr taught me that I try to teach, honoring him, is that everybody wants at least 2 things, and they are belonging, and they want their life to have meaning. And I can't figure out why we would want to deny either of those things to anybody. Everybody wants to belong, including us. Everybody wants their life to have some kind of meaning. Why can't we run with that? And I think it's because we don't understand the concept of a belonging system that isn't dualistic. And sadly, I believe that the easiest way to create or build community is if you have a common enemy. But if you build community around a common enemy, then you've already lost. You've already diminished what you could be to the point that you can't ever be what you could have been. So,
but you got security.
Well, unless the wind shifts, you do, or unless the collective thinking is wrong. And I think what I would like to do as part of my generation is set the table for things to happen, and set the table for the people who come behind me to feast at that table. And it feels to me like it has to be everybody bring a dish. Because if I set the table with the offering that I have for people to come behind me and I tell them what to bring, then that's the illusion of control, and I've limited what the feast would have been or could have been. And I also try to set the table for hard discussions, and I try to set the table for people to be able to learn. I try to set the table for people to be comfortable. And I think if we put ourselves in the position of creating space rather than thinking about how we're going to occupy space, then it's easier for us to find our place, if that makes any sense at all, and I certainly hope it does. I think that's what the church was supposed to be. A space, maybe more than a place, and a community more than a denomination, and more acceptance than rules. But somewhere along the way, we lost our ability to do without a boundary that keeps some people out and lets some people in. And I think we overcome that one relationship at a time. I don't think anybody's going to write the book or come up with the talk or hold the conference. I think one relationship at a time, we make space in a place in time for somebody else to join us. And I believe the greater good would be served that way. And I'm not good at it, and I'm not smart enough or creative enough or forward-thinking enough to know how to build a church that way. So I just build relationships and call it church.
That's
And
not
then,
like bad. You don't get in trouble.
well, if it's bad, I don't get in trouble, because I also go someplace to worship that suits my way of knowing who I am and knowing who God is and knowing the difference.
What's the difference between space and place?
Space can be anywhere, and according to that old article by Richard Foster, I have found it to be true that place is mutual, and I think that's the problem. I think we feel like we're in charge of whether or not other people have a place. And if you just create space and see what happens and see who comes, that eliminates some illusion that you can define somebody else's place.
Kind of sounds irresponsible and without a plan or direction.
And a little dangerous and kind of exciting and hopeful. And yeah, I think it's all of that. All of it. I think it's dangerous and irresponsible and might not work, and it could fail, and somebody could get hurt, and all of that's happening in places where there's a plan, and a 5-year plan and a 10-year plan and a budget and everything else.
Is not having a plan being faithful?
Not having a plan is understanding that God's faithful.
So I have a couple questions for us to kind of wrap up on. Maybe. There we go. So, how does it look like to make. That was quick. There we go. How does it look to make space for others without expecting something in return? What do you think? What does it look like to make space for others without expecting something in return? That's hard. What do you think? Have to learn to listen instead of talking. I think you also have to be open to things not going how you want them to go, not how you expected them to be. For some of us who are planners, that is harder said than done. What else? What else? What does it look like to make space for others without expecting something in return? And to realize that you don't, I think, have to agree on every single thing. Speak up a little bit. Yeah. 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 Walk a mile in other people's shoes, another person's shoes. but I appreciate but I appreciate initially you said it's more than walking in a person's shoes. It's walking with that person and the difference it makes to them. But I think ultimately to you, how do you really experience that? How do you really know in those that change? You know how you interact with them in creating hospitality. Yeah, this is. At first, I thought this was easy. I mean, this topic was easy, but the more I've thought about it and dug into it, it's hard to create true hospitality. It's not as easy as we think.
You know, one thing, I think when I was younger, I think I saw it so much that it seemed easy. But now it does seem hard. But back in the day, it just seemed that that's what people did.
Yeah.
I can't believe I'm saying back in the day.
I think I wrote this wrong. Suzanne mentions that different personality types take that did you know thinking, feeling, doing need different forms of engagement. How can you practically make room for these differences in your community or relationships? Did you know shouldn't be in there?
Hopefully she's learned a little bit from me. But even here in the church, she's much more engaged than I am. But greeting on Sunday, sometimes you see the same people over and over again, and at some point, a number of them will share some of their concerns or just their viewpoint of life. And that's been a great learning experience, and it's part of taking the step with my wife to get engaged to do things like that. So you expose yourself to these people.
Well, I will say this church is very welcoming, and it has helped us do that.
Hmm.
This church is very welcoming.
It's interesting just how churches give off different vibes. Um,
But I wonder, I know we're welcoming, but I wonder if we get to that next level.
which is,
I don't know, Linda, you talk about it. Just, you know, I do think about the surveys and things we've sent out about what you want to do, how you want to serve, what
How you
your
engage,
talents
yeah.
are, I mean, we work hard at trying to put people in the right places, and they seem very hospitable.
I think we do. Go ahead.
I'm on the membership committee, and what we've started doing is we, I can't remember if it's every 6 months or once a year, we look at people and look at how they are engaged in the church and what they're active in.
Good.
And if we see that they're not, then we reach out. So we're trying to go to that next level, if that's what you mean. Which it's been really interesting because we were a host family for a couple, and we really haven't gotten engaged in the church, and I felt like a failure.
I've been there.
You know, because you just
That's
feel
kind of a hospitality that sometimes doesn't get returned when you're that host family and they don't kind of respond to it. It's okay.
right, and then you realize it's where they are.
Yeah.
Somebody said, you know, it's funny. Who said that? It's where another person is, and you just have to accept that. But we are looking to keep, to be aware of more than just that initial welcoming moment in the community.
I think we do a really good job of welcoming, and I think we are a friendly congregation, as long as you're not here to rock the boat. I don't think we are, um, ready for a radically different worship style, or doing things radically different. I think if you fit in with the Davidson, the general Davidson, Lake Norman vibe, you fit in well here. But I think of those families that don't fit into that vibe, and why they continue to be engaged, and how do we continue to welcome them and open ourselves up to do things differently. I don't mean this a criticism, because I'm with the leadership of the church, but if we're being hospitable, are we open to changing too, and welcome? Yeah, I th-
Examine yourself and why would, what you're saying is tough. I mean, like, why, we rejoined here in 2020, okay? I mean, not Methodist. Methodists were fighting. I don't come to church to fight. Presbyterians had already fought.
yeah.
Presbyterians had already had to fight. And I that it drew me here because Presbyterians have had to fight. I don't think. But why would I want to come here and change this church? Why wouldn't I go to another church that is more what I want? I'm not quite sure. I think what you're saying is just
Let me give you an example. And yeah, I know I'm on YouTube Live, so this is just an example. So let's say all of a sudden Davidson Presbyterian closes, and they have 20, 30 members. We're the closest Presbyterian church, so if you're a lifelong Presbyterian, where are you going to end up? They have a they do things decently in order in their worship service, but their worship service is very different than ours. They still have a call to worship. They still do everything we do. They do it in a very different way. Okay, now we have this group of 20 people come into the life of our church. Do we expect them to conform to us? Do we change to be inclusive of them? Do we meet somewhere in the middle? It's a tough question. And that reality, maybe not here, but is happening. And how do you do? Good, Jane.
I had watched a church in Pawleys Island, an Episcopal church. They fought, and the Anglican church won and occupied the building and the property. And the others left and went to a predominantly African-American church that had had fabulous mission in over many, many, many years. Priests knew teach his children how to swim, but couldn't, was unknown growing up. And just a wonderful mission. But they knew, and the church was small. I don't know that you'd say dying, but the membership was drying up. And there was this predominant white membership coming in, and they just knew that one of the problems was this going to become a white church. And it has. But they do still have a mission that they have always run, and it's a fabulous group of people.
Yeah.
But it is a white church now. Now there are sprinkles of, diehard, faithful African American families that he served with. But I've seen that happen. But the mission is the same. And
Yeah. Well, that's good.
had tear down.
Presbyterian Church in Charlotte pretty much exploded over racial issues that were, when they drove down, it was music.
Music.
It was the emotional thing that
Interesting.
nobody could agree on. Now, they also didn't have a preacher who was very good either.
Yeah, that makes a big difference. It is almost time. Actually, wow. Time has gotten away. Question for you to think about. How does hospitality as a spiritual practice invite you to see others differently, especially those you find difficult to engage with? And I'm not going to ask you for answers, but that you can mull that one over lunch today. How does hospitality as a spiritual practice invite you to see others differently, especially those you find difficult to engage with? As we get ready to close, some questions to think about in the coming days. I sense the Spirit inviting me to. I'm being drawn towards. I'm willing to let go. What I'm willing to embrace is. Our closing benediction is a poem that Suzanne wrote and recommended. May you be the one that sets the table, inviting others to bring what they have, trusting that in this space, true community will flourish. Go in peace, knowing that as you welcome others, you too will find your place. Amen. Don't forget, next week we're back here. John Kirkendall and Gene Johnson start a 3-week Advent series centered around music and Scripture. So we will be singing. Thank you all for being here today.